Okay, continuing on with our outstanding guest speaker series, the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab is proud to present Sarah Dana. Sarah is the Senior Librarian for Genealogy and Local History at the Carlsbad City Library, where she oversees one of the largest genealogy collections in California. Based at the Georgina Cole branch, she works alongside a staff of passionate genealogists and the North San Diego County Genealogical Society to build a collection that meets the needs of researchers and to provide a wide range of genealogical education programs for the community. She earned her bachelor's degree in art history from Portland State University in Portland, Oregon, and her master's degree in library science specializing in archives and museum studies from the University of Texas at Austin. Sarah's presentation today will cover genealogy collection at the Georgina Cole Library and include a case study illustrating how the Cole Library's resources were used to unravel a family mystery. So please, let's all put our hands together and welcome Sarah.
I'm really happy to be here. All right, so I assume I just share my screen and start going, yes?
Absolutely.
Okay, so yes, as Suzanne said, I oversee the genealogy collection at the Carlsbad City Library located in Carlsbad, California. We're in the north end of San Diego County. And the Carlsbad City Library, okay, hold on here one second. I am so sorry. Oh, there it goes. My screen was not advancing. The Carlsbad City Library consists of 3 library locations, and the physical genealogy collection is located at the Georgina Cole Library location. And this was the first building in Carlsbad that was built expressly for library services way back in 1967. It was rechristened to honor our namesake, Georgina Cole, who was the city's first library director in 2000, and then it was completely renovated in 2015. So the photo on the right here shows the interior of the library, and if any of you have happened to visit us before, you may remember this big open space used to be occupied by a very wet atrium, which has been removed, and the whole place is flooded with light now, and you can get a glimpse in this photo of the second floor, which is where the genealogy collection is housed. So the entire second floor of the Georgina Cole Library location is dedicated to genealogy and local history research. And we are located right off the freeway on Carlsbad Village Drive, right off of I-5, and the collection is open and available all the hours that the library is open, which is 7 days a week. But a lot of our resources and information about the collection is accessible 24/7 through our website, and I'll talk more about that throughout the presentation. So the Cole Library happens to have one of the largest genealogy collections in Southern California, and it contains all the types of records that you would hope for. County histories. We have a great collection of periodicals, absolutely fabulous, underutilized collection of periodicals, maps, primary, secondary sources, how-to guides. These resources take the form of books and microform, so Microfiche and Microfilm. And while the collection's coverage is primarily focused on the United States, between the 17th and 19th centuries predominantly, there have been some collection development efforts to provide coverage of the British Isles, Scandinavia, and a new concentrated focus really in response to patron demand to expand coverage to all of North America, so to bring in more Mexico and Canada resources. So we also have 7 subscription genealogy databases, which truly increases our geographic coverage to worldwide, and I'll talk more about those databases momentarily. So in addition to over 50,000 volumes of genealogical material that we have upstairs, you'll also find an absolutely fabulous staff that are friendly, helpful, and professional. So everyone that works upstairs we're all employees. A lot of times our patrons get confused and think we're volunteers, but no, we are all paid employees of the Carlsbad City Library. And anyone that's working the service desk upstairs has genealogy experience and extensive research experience, and everyone up there is happy to help you. We're very passionate. A lot of the staff, actually more than half the staff in genealogy, came to this as a second career. They have retired and have done this as a second career because they are just that passionate about family history and want to get our patrons excited about it as well. We actually did a calculation recently and found that when we combined all our years of genealogy experience, we had over 250 years combined. So a lot of expertise on staff. One of the programs we offer is called Ask a Genealogist, and that is a one-on-one program that gives you an hour of dedicated research with a staff member to help you either, help patrons that are just getting started or help break down brick walls. And the way that works is you fill out a form and then we match you to the best person on staff to help you based on your inquiry. So if you're interested in Scandinavia, we have somebody for you. If you're interested in French, we have somebody for you. Mexico, we have somebody for you. So we get a lot of activity with that program. We also teach something called Focus On classes. I'll talk in more detail about in a little bit, but the Focus On classes are really about making the most of the library's collection and the library resources. We'll give tours if you're interested of the collection and the facility upstairs. It is a little bit different upstairs than downstairs in that we keep it as quiet as we can because we want to facilitate our researchers that are doing that real concentrated genealogy reference work. We have 9 computers that are dedicated to genealogy research. We offer a free Wi-Fi, which is library guest network. It's a 1 gigabit network. We also provide, of course, photocopiers and printers, including mobile printing, so you can print from your own device connected to our Wi-Fi network, and then a variety of scanners. So I mentioned that we have a lot of microforms, so we do have a digital microfilm and microfiche scanner, and so this allows you to not only view and print images, but also crop them, annotate them. You can combine records. This is great for newspapers, of course, combining, the article when it jumps pages. You can create JPEGs, PDFs, and then you can save and upload those to your family tree. And then last year, the local Genealogy Society donated 2 additional scanners. One is an overhead book scanner, the one on the right, which is fabulous because it doesn't damage the books when you're making scans or photocopies. And then on the left is a very high quality professional level photo scanner that also does slides and negatives up to 2400 DPI. So we are extremely fortunate to have such a strong community partner in the North San Diego County Genealogical Society, which is also known as NSDCGS. They are a very long time and valued partner of the library and the city, and in fact are almost as old as this library. The society was actually formed 6 months after this location opened. They were formed in our community room, and they're a very generous donor to the collection. Back in the day, so they formed in 1968. So back in the day, they donated things like shelves and book carts, typewriters, and analog microfilm readers. But now they donate primarily books. And those books are selected by a book committee, and this committee works in conjunction with library staff to select materials. So like I mentioned earlier, they're expanding their scope of the collection to encompass all of North America. And it's really been an effort since I've come on to make our selections driven more by data versus the genealogical research interests of committee members as it used to be. But to do that, we do an annual county survey of the members of the society in which they choose which counties are most important to them for their genealogical research. We have a 50-50 purchase program, which allows society members to split the costs of books to be added to the library collection. And then through our catalog system in the library, we mark which items are used and then are able to use that data to determine what are kind of our hot spots of use in the collection, and either add more to that, or it helps us maybe determine that we don't want to buy something because we don't seem to be getting a lot of action in that area of collection. We also could not offer the level of genealogy programming that we do without our partnership with the North San Diego County Genealogical Society. So together, we are able to offer about 75 free genealogical education programs a year. And the programs on this list are offered throughout the year. Those in blue are offered every month. These classes are held at City of Carlsbad facilities. They're so popular, we're now at 4 different city facilities, and all these classes are free and open to the public. You don't need to be a member of the society to attend these programs. You don't even need a library card to attend these programs. And so, you know, the DNA classes have been extremely popular. Those are one of the more recent additions. The Foundations is for beginners. DNA interest group gets really into the meat of genetic genealogy. The Legacy Users Group is a group specifically for those that use the Legacy family tree software, and they really get in and dig deep into all the features of that tree keeping software. They offer a 10-week class twice a year on writing your own memoirs, which is fabulous. And then, of course, Beginning and Refresher, that's offered quarterly. It's a 6-hour class that really goes over, or I should say, introduces and reminds the most important record groups, genealogy research, and talks about how the library's collection, what we have in the library collection related to those record groups. The Society also sponsors an annual trip to the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. And so we offer a series of classes in advance of that trip to prepare attendees to make the most of their time while they're there. So how do you find out about the information, the resources that we have in the collection? And the best way to do that is our online library card, or sorry, library catalog, I apologize. And that is available on our website. And so I should mention here that while our catalog is online, meaning it's available anywhere that you have an internet connection, we are not a Worldcat participating library. So if some of you take advantage of Worldcat to locate genealogy resources, which is a shared catalog managed by OCLC, unfortunately, Carlsbad City Library does not participate in that. So in order to discover our holdings, you really do need to go to our website and access our catalog. And so the way you do that is you navigate to our website, which is carlsbadlibrary.org, and the first green box across the top is services, second link is catalog. Once you're in the catalog, you can use that first drop-down menu to limit your results to genealogy, and then simply enter your search terms in the search box. So in this example, we've entered Franklin County, and we've limited our results to genealogy. But as you can imagine, or surely know, there are lots of Franklin counties. So you can then use the limiters on the left to limit to the state you were looking for, if that was applicable to your search. We use a modified Dewey Decimal System for the collection, and we have a couple tools upstairs to help you navigate the collection. So one is the smaller oval is showing the call number guide, our call number and record group guide. And this guide is available on the end caps of our aisles, but it's also available on our webpage. And I'll show you how to get to that at the end of the presentation. And the other oval here is showing our county call number book. So as I'm sure you all know, in order to effectively research our ancestors, we just really have to know where they were living. And so as a result, the bulk of our collection is organized geographically. And every county has a unique call number. And so once you know your county's call number, and you can find it using this book, it's really easy to walk to that section of the collection, browse the shelves, and see what we have related to that county specifically. And so this is what our call number system looks like. So this is a reproduction of a spine label. And so Gen at the top, that indicates that the book is in the genealogy collection. Another lettering you might see is Gen Per, which is Gen Periodicals, Gen OS, which is Gen Oversize, and another one would be Gen Circ, which is Genealogy Circulating. That next number, 974841. Well, 974.8, that's Pennsylvania. 974841 is specific to York County, Pennsylvania. And then V2 is the record type. V2 is vital records. If we can get even more specific than that, we have marriage records, V21, death records, I believe, is V28. So again, using that guide, and I'll show you where to find that on our webpage at the end, it's really easy to just look at a spine label, know its coverage and what the predominant record included inside that volume is. And then the last letters is either just the first three letters, title, or the author. And then I'm going to show you this picture again, because there's a lot of information actually in this photo. And this time I want to call out this small little shelf at the end of this end cap. For the most part, well, yeah, 99% of our collection is, probably 99.9, is non-circulating, so reference only. And of course, that's because we want the books that people are looking for to be here when they come and visit. So non-circulating. And then this small cart here, this is our entire circulating collection. So these books you could check out with a Carlsbad City Library card for 3 weeks. And so, you know, again, I mentioned Gen Circ. So anything that's on this cart is going to have a spine label that says Gen Circ. I know, again, based on the record type of A5, that this is a DNA book. And so a DNA book is a great example of the type of resources that we've put in the circulating collection. So the circulating collection is small, but it contains that type of information that you've really got to dive into. It's not a quick look up, you know, is my great-great-grandfather included in this book of wills? You know, you can determine that pretty quick, but if you're going to digest, you know, untangling adoption using DNA results, you're going to need to spend some time with that book. So we've put things like that in our circulating collection. So in addition to being able to check out books, let's talk about all that you get with a Carlsbad City Library card. And that includes access to our library computer labs, access to mobile printing, access to our scanners, and the big one is you get access to 5 of our 7 genealogy databases from home. And the good news is you do not have to live in Carlsbad to get a Carlsbad City Library card. You don't even have to live in California. You don't even have to live in the United States for that matter. You can also apply for a library card online. And there are many ways to do this, but probably the simplest is from within the online catalog. There is a link, get a library card. And if you go through that process, you will get a temporary barcode that is good for 14 days. So you do have to visit our library in person, one of our 3 locations, to get a physical card and a permanent barcode number. But if you don't yet have a Carlsbad City Library card, you can go through this online registration, and you'll actually have access to 5 of our 7 genealogy databases from home for those 14 days. But before those 14 days were up, you would need to come into our library to get a physical card. And those physical cards are good for 3 years. So we hope to see you guys down in Carlsbad.
Sarah, hold on for 1 second. Give her a hand for this. I mean, please.
this is something, I mean, Sarah, I think I told you last week when you and I were doing our sound test, I used to practically live at your library. I mean, when I lived in Southern California, I mean, I absolutely adore your library. And when I moved to Nevada and I had to give up my Carlsbad card, I was heartbroken. And now you told me last week we did the sound test that I could get one again. So I'm thrilled to death. So I am just tickled pink that you told me this. And I hope every one of these people in this class, you know, if they can't make it in person, at least do the 14-day trial. And hopefully if they do make it down to Southern California, to stop by one of your 3 branches to get the card.
Yes, I hope they do as well. And it's beyond, of course, our genealogy databases. You have access to all our resources that we have within the library, which is extensive, which I'm not going to get all into today. But if you do go through this 14-day trial, this is the screen that you're going to get, and it's going to give you this temporary barcode number, and you're going to want to write that down because you will need that to access the databases from home. So not all about these databases, you know, I've been talking about them. What are they? As I said, we subscribe to 7. That's an increase. We've added 2 since I've been here. And our databases are accessible via any of the library computer labs. So labs at any of the 3 locations on the library guest Wi-Fi. So I mentioned that Wi-Fi network. If you want to come and use our databases on your own device, you are welcome to. You just connect to our library guest Wi-Fi and you will have access, and then 5 of them are available from home. And this is a screenshot from our webpage, and you can see that we've added in bold to the description of the 5 of those that are available remotely to Carlsbad City Library cardholders.
Sarah, what 5 are those? I see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I see the ones that are bolded in dark black. I see. Gotcha. So
yes,
Archives, Fold 3, Heritage Quest, and newspapers.com. And
that's correct.
America's Genealogy Bank.
Yeah, and America's Genealogy Bank. And in fact, America's Genealogy Bank, this is our most recent acquisition, and it has proven so valuable to our researchers, especially, and somewhat surprisingly, let me say, somewhat surprisingly, this America's Obituaries listed under the modern column, 1977 to current, because those of you that have been doing research for a while, you might have come across that it's often the more recent obituaries that prove to be more difficult to find in our databases. And so this has been a huge godsend for a lot of our researchers and staff even to have access to that. And so this is new and it's available from home. American Ancestors, those of you that have used American Ancestors know that this is maintained by the New England Historic Genealogical Society, the oldest genealogical society in the United States. It contains over 1 billion records, and it has specialized coverage of the northeastern states. This would be a database that's only available when you're here in the library. Ancestry Library Edition, you know, there's a reason Ancestry is the most popular genealogy database. It has an enormous collection of international resources and available in all our locations and on Wi-Fi. Archives Unbound, this is through Gale. This is a newer acquisition for us. It is topically organized, includes a lot of primary sources. The collection that is probably most relevant to genealogists that is in here is the County and Regional History Collection. This is available from home. Fold 3, of course, known for the records related to the armed forces, also a great source for naturalization records and city directories. Great source for city directories, especially for places like Chicago. This is available at all our locations and from home. Heritage Quest, you know, we have patrons that don't have a subscription to Ancestry and maybe aren't as comfortable using Family Search. So we do have users that will rely on Heritage Quest to get to census from home. It's also a great source for digital books. In fact, a lot of the books that we have on Microfiche when they're requested by a patron, we'll do a double check and see if we can find it online in Heritage Quest, because often we can, and it's just easier to search that way. So great source for digital books. Available from home, as I mentioned. And then newspapers.com, this is great. You can plug it right into your Ancestry account. Even using this library edition, you can create an account and plug it right into your Ancestry account if you have it. Contains over 85 million newspaper pages and available from home. So how do you get to these from home? Well, you have to access them through our website, and specifically through the genealogy page on our website. So we're going to navigate to carlsbadlibrary.org, that services box again, that first green box. This time we're going to choose genealogy. And you may want to bookmark this page on your personal devices to access databases, but also because there's a lot of great information on this page. And so under the heading e-resources, you'll see, again, the list of our 7 databases, and the blue text, of course, is the link. So you'll just click the link of those 5 that are available from home, and you'll be prompted to enter your library card number. And it says your 14-digit library card number. If you have one of those temporary barcode numbers, that will work as well for 14 days. But once you do that, by going in through our webpage, entering your library card number, that's how it's validated through our database providers, and that's what gives you access. So the other information that's available on our page includes the sign up button for our Focus On classes, right there, right next to e-resources. And Focus On is a hands-on class that's taught in a closed computer lab. Looks a little, not quite as large and lovely as your computer lab, but a smaller computer lab at our Library Learning Center. That's one of the 3 locations of the Carlsbad City Library, but it's just down the road from Georgina Cole Library location. The classes are repeated several times a month. They're taught exclusively by library staff, and they focus on using library tools. So January's class is entitled Helpful Hacks, and it's about new strategies and some of the staff's favorite tips for finding resources in our catalog, on the shelves, and in the databases. So we definitely go over research strategies and online resources, and then new technology. So last year, the new technology piece was really integrating the new scanners into our Focus On classes. And this year, we're pretty excited. In 2 months of Focus On in 2020, we're going to be incorporating virtual reality because we're getting some Oculus Quest headsets. So that is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm sorry, I had a font issue on this. This says you must sign up. I apologize. And you must sign up for these using that green button because our computer lab only seats 8. So that's why we offer this 2 to 4 times a month. We've had to increase it to 4 times a month, basically based on demand, but we do require that you sign up using that button on our webpage. How would you find out about all our Focus On classes and the other genealogy education programs? Well, all of our genealogy events are located in our events calendar online. And so this time on carlsbadlibrary.org, if you chose the second green box, which is events, you can go to events home and you can search events by keyword. And so every description of a genealogy event includes the word genealogy, which surprisingly was something we actually had to modify, but that was good to learn. So if you keyword search the word genealogy, and you can expand the date range underneath that search bar, you'll get a list of all the upcoming genealogy programs for the upcoming month. We post them on the online calendar monthly. And if you click on one of these, so in this example, it's the Salt Lake City Research Readiness class, it gives you an example of, it gives you a description of what the class is going to cover. And if you click that first link that says click here, and the more info, click here, you click that, it will actually open a PDF of our monthly calendar. And these calendars are also located at all our locations in print form. But give you a print version of PDF version or print version in this case of the entire month's calendar, and it's two-sided, and the little leaves, the little colored leaves, are to help you determine where that class is located. So as I mentioned, we are so lucky to have such a large community of genealogists here located in North San Diego County that we have outgrown many of our spaces and are now in 4 different locations throughout the city. And so there is a rhyme and reason to the way our programs are offered. And, you know, once you, if hopefully when you start attending these, it'll start to make sense to you. But, you know, for example, intermediate is always the 3rd Tuesday of the month. Program is the 4th Tuesday of the month. And we've also started adding save the dates on the back of our calendars to help you keep track of what's coming up for those classes that I mentioned aren't offered monthly, but sometimes quarterly or just a couple times a year. So that's a brief tour or a brief description of the program here and the collection. But real quick, I would like to give you a tour of our webpage. So again, carlsbadlibrary.org. If you put that in your URL bar, it will redirect a much longer and less easy to remember URL. But carlsbadlibrary.org, that first green box, services, go down to genealogy.
Okay, Sarah, we're seeing a gray screen right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. Let me see. I want to say, let's see here. I want to see, pause share. You're seeing a green screen.
It looks like there's a box over the screen because we can see the Carlsbad, the picture of the Carlsbad screen in the background. Okay. In the foreground, there's a big gray box.
All right, let's see here. All right, 1 second here. Okay, now are you seeing?
Yeah, now we see it.
Okay, so if you put carlsbadlibrary.org into your URL bar, it will redirect to the much longer address. But carlsbadlibrary.org is just much easier to remember. That first green box is going to get you to services. We're going to select genealogy. And then this is the genealogy page on the Carlsbad City Library website. And if you visit us at the Georgina Cole Library, all our computers are, this is where you'll start, is this homepage. And so this includes a lot of the information that I provided you with today. You know, our e-resources. Again, also includes a link to the NSDCGS website, a link to the events calendar, the annual Focus On calendar, this genealogy resources link. This is a PDF that includes a lot of the information I talked about today. Also breaks down how you use all our call numbers. Back here, I mentioned that call number and record type sheet that was available at the end of an aisle. So these are some of our frequently used call numbers. And then on the back, these are those record types. So I mentioned V2 was vital records. You can see how we are able to break it down even further there. Available. I mentioned the Ask a Genealogist program. The sign-up form is here. We post a lot of our Focus On class handouts. So if you want a nice guide on how to do Scandinavian research, you could find that here. I also mentioned we have a lot of microfilm and microfiche. These are some guides on using some of our microfilm collections. You know, so for example, let's see, it would be a good one to bring up here. Let's bring up the Corbin collection. So this is a manuscript collection that we have on microfilm, but this tells you what's on every roll. So this will help you navigate that collection. a lot of these collections are hundreds of rolls. So without these guides, they're virtually worthless or hard to use, much more hard to use. And then at the end, we have links to some external websites that we often feature in our Focus On classes, or that we just want to make sure our patrons are aware of. So that's a tour of that. Before I move on to the second PowerPoint, are there any questions?
Yeah, we have a question. Go ahead, speak loud.
Your 3-week offer?
Her question was your 3-week free trial. Is that a one-time offer?
You know, it's a I'm not sure how often they're going in and cleaning up the temporary barcodes. I think they would like it to be a 2-week offer, and then that you come down. But I think if you did it more than once, it would work.
That'll be our secret.
Yeah.
You know, I have, we got lots of questions. Yeah, go ahead.
With your classes, are there any?
Great question.
You'll have to repeat it, Suzanne. I can't hear this.
The question was, do you have any plans to videotape your classes and put them so they can be reviewed again by, you know, anybody from anywhere at a later date?
That is a fabulous question, and the answer is yes. So the society, again, our partnership with the society is just fabulous, and they have already ventured into this realm. Beginning last year, they started filming their intermediate classes, and the topics for intermediate might be, just deep dives on the census, or migration trails west, or the history of vital records in the United States. So even though it's called intermediate, it's definitely something that a beginner should feel comfortable attending or watching. And so I helped them set up Camtasia, and so we've been doing screen capture on those programs, and they are uploading them to their website behind the member wall. So that would be a benefit of being a member of their society. So membership in the NSDCGS supports the collection at the Georgina Cole Library. It supports programming that's made available to the community, the genealogy programming that's available to the community. And one of the features members get, one of the gifts they get back, is access to those programs. So things like Focus On, which are taught exclusively by library staff, we have talked about doing that, and the library as a whole is looking into doing that and making those freely available on our website. I'd love to say that's coming in 2020, but it'll probably be more like 2021.
Great question. We had another question. Go ahead, speak loud.
Library. You allow personal scanners, and also you take like donations or family history library.
Did you hear the question? It was a two-part question.
If you could repeat it, I heard something about donations, but go ahead and repeat it, please.
Okay, the first part was, could you go into a little bit more information about the scanners? I assume that when you said personal scanners, you mean can you just bring something from home and scan it?
Well, no, like if you had your own. Can you use that in the library? Well, we have scanners, but
Oh, she wants to know if she can bring her own personal scanner, like a Flip Pal, with her and use it in your library.
You bet.
And
absolutely.
The second question is, do you take donations to your family history collection?
We do. So we, as I mentioned, we have 50,000 volumes, and we are running up a little bit on space. So we do accept donations. We accept donations, and the way we decide whether we're going to add it to the genealogy collection is, we don't want to duplicate that's already in the collection. We don't want to duplicate information that's very easily accessible through one of our databases. And if it's a family history specific book, is it available online somewhere through Happy Trust or Internet Archive or Google Books, etc. Then we'll add it to the collection. For books that do duplicate materials in our collection or that we can't add into our collection due to space constraints, one of the things that we've been doing with the Society last year is we are working with the Paradise Genealogical Society in Paradise, California. So Paradise lost their entire library and collection in the Camp Fire. And so they have recently acquired a space. The Society is trying to get themselves back together. And so I want to say we donated nearly 300 pounds of books last year to help them with that effort. And those were books that we couldn't take into our collection, but they were fabulous resources. These were great genealogy resources, a lot of them foundational to a good genealogy collection. So we were able to give those to the Paradise Genealogy Society.
That's a great project. Wonderful. More questions? Yeah, I have a couple while they're thinking. Just out of curiosity, this is more of a librarian question. I seem to always ask the same question when I speak to a librarian in one of our presentations. What are your stats, like, regular, like on an average day, how many people come into the genealogy library?
That's a great question. It really varies. Most of our programs are on Tuesdays, and so Tuesdays we generally see an uptick. We also have seasonal fluctuations. January is usually a really good month for us because, we've come off spending a lot of time with our families, hearing stories, or we've made a New Year's resolution to get back into genealogy or to start genealogy. That way, but I would say on average, we answer about 1,000 genealogy questions a month.
Wow.
At the desk, yeah. I mean, we're open 7 days a week, and we do have a reputation in the community for being able to provide, in-depth, good genealogy research help.
Well, that kind of segues into my next question. Specifically for my students here in the class today, how would they reach out to you for your help on their research?
Right. So our webpage here, which I think I'm still sharing, we have in that second paragraph, we include our phone number. We have an email, genealogy@carlsbadca.gov. That's an email to the staff. This phone number, 604-342-2931. That's the Genealogy and Local History Service Desk. The other way would be to just connect with one of us at one of these programs to just visit with us, or if you're interested in setting up an appointment, to complete that Ask a Genealogist form. And I apologize, we tried to put a fillable form on our website and it broke. It worked until we put it on the website. So unfortunately, you have to print this out, fill it out, scan it back to us by email or send it or something like that. So I apologize about that. But this form, I'll just bring it up real quick. So this form, asks a little bit of information about what your focus is and what specifically you're hoping to learn and when you're available. And then again, that would, what I would do is based upon the person's interests, I would connect them with a specific staff member and we'd set up an hour of dedicated time where you get that staff person one-on-one. Sometimes you'll just swing by the Cole Library and you'll get somebody one-on-one for 2.5 hours. But of course, on the payment load, how many people we've got coming in that day. So the Ask a Genealogist program really allows you to get that 1 hour of focused time with the staff member. And how it usually works is in advance of that appointment, the staff member is working on it, and they're working on it with their colleagues, trying to do a little research in advance before the person comes, so that they're hopefully when you come, you get a little bit of a, who do you think you are type experience. So it's a real fun program. We love doing it.
Would you be able to do that remotely, or do you have to do that one-on-one in person?
Not remotely. I think we'd be able to do it remotely. We're not at this point really set up for screen sharing, but we get remote questions from people all over the world, and we can email we can, email PDFs of questions, pages that are located in our collection, or send links and kind of talk through solutions. And especially if they're using Family Search or Ancestry and their trees public on Ancestry, we can definitely collaborate that way remotely.
Okay, so let's say one of my students would like that one-on-one with one of your staff, and they're not in the classroom. Like today we have the equipment here. Do you use like Skype or Google Hangouts, or what do you use?
So what I would probably do, again, because we're just not quite there yet, honestly, we'd probably do it over the phone. If we were using Family Search or Ancestry, we'd probably be over the phone and navigating those sites together is really probably what we'd do. If the person didn't use either of those programs for their tree, we may send some things via email as a PDF or as links, and then on the phone, we would open those together and talk about them.
I see, yeah, because our school is actually for remote reference questions, not just for genealogy, but for regular, reference questions for our students that are non-genealogy related. We're using Google Hangouts now.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of great solutions. Of course, we're a department within the city of Carlsbad, so we adopt what the city adopts, and sometimes we move a little bit more slow. Well, we often move a little bit more slowly than educational institutions, for sure.
Okay, let's see here. Let's see. I did have a couple other questions. The one thing I wanted to point out, and this is for the benefit of the class, one of the real big benefits of our program here is that we do circulate almost all of our genealogy books. I know from being in so many genealogy libraries over the years that it's a non-circulating collection like you were showing in your collection, but we're not quite as big as you are yet, and so what we're really focusing on is getting people interested in genealogy. And since most people do their genealogy research like late in the evening or on weekends, our philosophy, at least at this point in time, is let the heavy duties non-rare books, if they're rare, then of course we won't, but if they're non-rare, we actually let almost all of our genealogy books circulate. In fact, today's genealogy book of the week was a 4-volume set on royal families, which literally lists, generations and generations of people. And I know in other libraries, genealogy collections, these do not circulate. But like I said, our biggest goal right now is just to get the interest up in our community, and eventually, maybe even open up a genealogy library, unique to just genealogy books. So, we've got a long-term goal, but right now our short-term goal is just to drum up the interest.
Well, that is fabulous, and you all are very lucky to have access to that, to be able to take those resources home. Part of that non-circulating collection, the history behind that decision here really has to do with our partnership with the society, and that they were purchasing a lot of the books, the members were donating a lot of the books, and it really was, they wanted all these resources to be available when members came to use the collection. So we have maintained that. I should note, though, that while we don't loan our books through interlibrary loan, if your school participates in interlibrary loan, we do frequently do lookups or photocopy requests for interlibrary loan of materials located in our collection.
Oh, that's really good to know. Really, really good to know. Now, earlier in your presentation, you touched on Worldcat. We have a few new people here today, and I don't know if they are even familiar with Worldcat. Can you take a moment and explain that?
Sure. So, So Worldcat, actually, I can even navigate there while I'm on my screen here. So Worldcat is it's a collaborative catalog. So institutions share their holdings material in Worldcat, and Worldcat is run by OCLC. And OCLC, I'm sorry, it's failing me what it stands for, but it's the Library Consortium. So that's the LC, Library Consortium. And so what you can do is in Worldcat, you can search for, anything. Let me see, let me put in, Callahan family, Kentucky. And, this will bring up titles of books. And here I'm going to click on this particular title. I'm going to come down, and I find that this particular title, at least of participating libraries in Worldcat, the closest one to me is and the only one is at actually the Family History Library. But let me see if I can get a better example here. Yeah, so here's a better example. So this particular title, Kentucky Pioneer, this shows me all the libraries that this book is located at. Again, we don't participate in Worldcat. It does cost money to participate in Worldcat. It actually costs quite a bit of money, and so we just can't do that here. But as you'll see, like in this example, these are university libraries with a much larger budget for this type of information, and of course their collections expand way beyond genealogy as far as materials that they want to publicize that they hold. So that's what Worldcat is. And you use ILL, the interlibrary loan. There's a different service offered by OCLC called ILL Share, I believe it's called. And it looks a lot like this, but it's what the people in the ILL office are using to determine who holds materials, who holds particular titles. The Carlsbad City Library does participate in that version, the ILL Share. So the ILL office would have access to our catalog.
Wonderful. So if there was a book that we didn't have and you had, and since your collection doesn't circulate, all they'd have to do is say, I want like chapter 1, pages 1 through 30, and request it through interlibrary loan through either the county public library, or if they're a employee or a student here, through our library.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And we often will do, and because again, you could just do this looking on our online catalog. If there was a title that you were interested in, shoot us an email. We usually, if there's an index, can just photocopy the index even, so you can determine, is this something I'm interested in or not. So of course, copyright restrictions, we can't copy the entire book for you, but we can usually do the index if there is one, and we have done and will do fairly simple lookups, like, you know, I'm trying to prove parentage. Is there anything about this and that, you know, and we can do that.
That's a wonderful benefit. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, any other questions before she goes on to the next, the case that she's going to show us how she solved it? Okay, we'll go ahead and go on then, Sarah.
Okay, so give me just a moment, because I've discovered that if I want to switch between what I'm sharing, I need to stop and then start again. So I'm going to stop sharing. One moment. And I'm going to go. Okay.
Can we see the gray screen again?
Okay.
Now we see it.
All right. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about focus on classes, and this presentation is a very shortened version of a focus on class. So usually our January focus on classes, like I mentioned, this year's is called Helpful Hacks. The last couple of years we've done something called Crash Course. This is from one of our crash courses. They've become our favorite classes to offer. These are just a lot of fun to do. And again, our January classes they're tended to focus on how you bring it all together. Because one question we get a lot from beginners is something like, well, what database should I use? Should I use Family Search or Ancestry? Or what about Heritage Quest? And they usually don't like our response, but of course, as you all know, the answer is all of them. You have to use all of them. You have to use all the databases. You have to use the online catalog and look at the resources in our collection. We want you to use Worldcat and look at what's in other institutions' collections, you know, and various web pages, county record web pages, etc. So January focus on classes are really designed to show how it all comes together. All the things you're going to learn, all the things you're going to learn in our programs and our focus on classes, all the things you're going to research using our physical collection and our databases, how that all comes together to tell the story of our ancestors. And in this case, Stockholm Sweet Home, this is about my great-grandparents, Amanda Johnson and Svea Stenberg. I don't know why it's there. So often, one of our patrons' first genealogy goals is to find an ancestor's immigration record. And one of the things we all know as genealogists, and this is whether you're searching for an immigration record or a birth record or a record of a land transfer or land ownership, is that time and place are so important, because it's time and place that determines who created the record and what information that record is going to contain. And this is a great example of that concept at work. So we've got a declaration of intention. This is for Amandus Johnson, filed in Denver, Colorado, and it's dated 1919. We found this in Ancestry Library Edition, and this is where I would say we're going to do a focus on Ancestry Library Edition in February. But in 1906, the federal government begins regulating the naturalization process. And in doing this, they standardize the forms and the requirements. So this is the beginning of the Bureau of Immigration, which later becomes the INS and is now USCIS. So prior to 1906, an alien could be naturalized in any court of record. And for those of you that have looked at records prior to 1906, you know that these state level courts managed the proceedings their own way, and there were varying standards across the country. So there's a wide variety in the type of information, the depth of information that's contained in these records before 1906. So again, this is dated 1919, and we just have so much information. We get a physical description of Amandus. We get a birthplace, Kalmar, Sweden. We get a birth date, May 30th, 1876. We get an address of where he's living in Denver. We get a date of arrival, November 10th, 1912. We get the ship he came on, the Simric. And this form also includes his wife, Wea, and because at this time we're dealing with what's known as derivative citizenship, in which the wife was granted citizenship as a byproduct of her husband. Of course, how do I know all this? Because it's in a book. Not all of our patrons take her advice, but especially if you're not having luck in a search, we often recommend our patrons check out some of her many high quality how-to resources, such as this book, They Became Americans, which gives a play-by-play of the changing landscape of immigration trends and naturalization laws and practices over time. And so you learn all sorts of things in this, this book, such as, did you know that in 1907, if a woman married an alien, she lost her citizenship, and that for a huge chunk of time, a woman really could not become there was a portion where she could, and then they realized, well, we never specified it had to be a man. But there was a big chunk of time where a woman basically could not become a citizen without being married, and that lasted until 1922. So this is a book that frequently gets pulled from our shelves by staff and patrons. So using that information on the Declaration of Intention, we got the Simric, and we got the date of arrival, November 10th, 1912. So it's really pretty easy at that point to find their passenger list. And so here is Amandus Johansson, and it lists his last residence as Stockholm. And, of course, I know as genealogists, you all know about spellings and how spellings change, but so this Johansson with the E-N, this is actually the Norwegian or Danish spelling. So not even the Swedish way to spell it, it would be SSON. But what really is grabbing my attention here are all the extra notations on the line underneath. So we have, DO for ditto, so indicating that Svea was Svea Johansson, but then someone has written over that. And then there's another notation over her name. So they've written over ditto, they've written Stenberg, and then they've written a little notation over Svea. And for those of you that have looked at passenger lists, I'll go back a page, from this time for Ellis Island, these are 2-page spreads. So of course we want to look at that second spread. And anytime that you find an ancestor in a database, whether it's census or a land record, a pension record, etc., library staff will always tell you, don't forget to flip the page. You might find a family nearby, you might find a clue nearby that's really going to break open your whole research strategy. But in the case of passenger lists, especially those after 1903, and I know that date again based on that book that I just shared with you, is you want to go to the last page for a voyage, find what's called the Record of Aliens Held for Special Inquiry. And, here are my great-grandparents. So we've got Amandus and FRD, and I had to cut out the whole part about how I figured out that was FRD for time. But we've got Amandus Johnson and friend, Swea Stenberg. And then we've got another code under the cause of detention, we've got LPC. And again, thanks to that great book, They Became Americans. I know that LPC stands for likely public charge. So LPC, likely public charge, these were aliens that were held because an official at Ellis Island feared they might become wards of the state. So why were they held? Is this a money thing? Well, that second page of the passenger list, which I didn't show you, but that second page of the passenger list showed that Amandus had $200 with him, which at this time is about $5,000 of today's money. So it's not a money thing. And if we look at this record of aliens held for special inquiry, we can actually see that they're held long enough to have 2 meals. That's what that last column is, but that they're released on November 11th. So they're held for one day. What changes on November 11th? Well, they get married. And so here's their marriage record. You can see that the groom and bride's residence is actually listed at Ellis Island. I'm sure you guys have been, keeping track of vital records in New York and all that entails. So this was actually acquired through the New York City Health Department. They get married on November 11th, 1912, and then they're released. So what's the deal? Can't an unmarried woman enter Ellis Island? Well, of course she can. That's not it. So we got to look at more clues. So what's going on here? Well, Swea was about 5 months pregnant. Her first daughter, Goldie, is born just a few months later in 1913. And so I find this out, and I can't wait to tell my mom because I think this is just a bombshell. Swea, who used to get mad at my mom for wearing pants, she shows up to this country unmarried and pregnant. Like, I just couldn't believe this. And my mom was shocked, but then she proceeded to quickly one-up me. She says, I might as well tell you this because you're probably going to find out. And that is that when Amandus and Swea got here, they accidentally in quotes, accidentally bought a brothel in Chicago. And one day, the Chicago mob comes by to get their protection money from Amandus, and Amandus wouldn't give it to him. And they beat him up. They beat him up for not giving the money. And that they had to leave Chicago in the cover of night. And I just didn't believe this. And so, how am I going to prove this story? And so I think, well, how about a newspaper? So using one of our databases that you can get at home with a Carlsbad Library card, newspapers.com, I accessed the Chicago Daybook, and what do you know? Amandus Johnson at 2162 Lincoln Avenue was beaten by a robber who entered rooming house on pretext of renting room. And so I can't believe it. It's true. And so I shared this article with my mom, and she said that, yes, Swea used to, talk about this quite a bit. And she would always say that, after this happened, Amandus, he was a chicken. He was just Swedish accent instead of chicken. So again, this is using one of our databases, newspapers.com, and a database that we'll be including in our focus on newspapers in July. So using this, I not only verified a family tale, I've also got an address now. I've got a Chicago address. And so using, one of the things we talk about a lot in our programming here is how to add context and color to your family tree. And so this, I believe I got through the Chicago Historical Society. Sorry, I didn't list where I got it there. But this is less than a mile from where their brothel / they say it's a boarding house was located at 2162 Lincoln. And, and as you can see, it maybe wasn't so posh at the time. Now this is like 10 minutes from Lincoln Park Zoo. So, we know that he came with that $5,000 in today's money, which seems like a lot. And I thought, well, where did he get that $5,000? So I reached out to family. Of course, one of for doing your genealogy is gather all the information you know and all the information that your family members know. And so I reached out to an uncle, and he remembered hearing that Amandus had actually come over earlier before he came with Swea. He had come over with his brothers and made some money as a cattle rancher in Montana. So how can I verify this information? Uh-oh. I'm gonna have to take a quick pause and plug in. I am so sorry. One moment.
Sure. By the way, that book that she was just talking about, They Became Americans, we have it. And if it's not checked out, it's on the back cards right up there. So if you want to check that book out and take it home, more than welcome to. And I can check when she's done with the presentation, see if it's checked out or not. And it was our book of the week, I think about a month ago. So it should be on the card. Yeah. Oh, let's see what's going on. The subscription databases, we have some, but not the ones that she was talking about, unfortunately. However, I am working on that. I'm working on getting a institutional subscription to Ancestry.com, and getting the others would be dependent on as it has to grow. Because I have to get more people in order to get the price.
Heritage Quest. Found things on there.
Oh, you got it? Okay. Yeah, Randall, he comes in early and signs everyone in for me.
I'm back.
Okay.
I apologize. So anyway, I'm trying to figure out where Amandus, if he came over earlier. And so how can I do this? Well, there were 4 censuses that asked about immigration information. That's 1900, 1910, 1920, and 1930. But of course, Amandus gives a different answer for all of those, for those that I found him on. And I could just look at lots of passenger lists for Amandus Johnson. But Amandus is actually not that uncommon of a name for this time period. And Johnson is the most common Swedish surname. So that's not going to work. So what I end up looking at are the household examination books on family search. And we're going to do a deep dive on Scandinavian genealogy in our March Focus On class. And in that class, we would go into much more detail into what this record is. But the household examination records, these were created by priests, parish priests. And I know from that declaration of intention, back to that first record, that Amandus is from Kalmar, and he was born May 30th, 1876. And I find him here. This is his family. And oftentimes, for those looking for their Scandinavian ancestors, this is literally done as a page-by-page search through these. especially if you've got Johnsons. But I find that he's actually from the Meadows parish and on a farm called Florholt. That's that word up there on the top left. That's the farm he's living on. So these exams were done annually, basically for a priest to determine whether or not a parishioner was a communicant in good standing. And I had found household examination books for the Johnsons on Ancestry, but this one comes from later in time. This one was on Family Search, and I am so excited when I find this because all the names are crossed out, which is not usually something that excites us, but so excited because the names are crossed off. Because not only did the parishioners have to prove that they could recite the catechism, etc., but in Sweden, in these rural areas at this time, they had to check in with the parish priest if they came into a parish or if they left the parish. And the priest wrote down when they left and where they left to. So, here. So I've zoomed in here a little bit and kind of collapsed the page. So Amandus is located kind of there in the middle, Amandus Alof, and he's actually one of 11, something I didn't know. But that column on the end, that Bortflyttad, that is when they've left. And I see that Amandus left for North America on January 31st, 1896. The other thing I see is that a lot of his siblings left as well. So this is a lot of great information. So, you know, I'll just zoom in on that a little bit. There's Amandus. Gives me his birth date, May 30th, 1876, there in the middle. And then on the right, he went to North America on January 31st, 1896. So a tip that beginners have to pull into is they want to keep their research simple, and I totally get it. They only want to do their direct line. They don't want to waste time on siblings. They just want to go back. But sooner or later, everybody hits a brick wall, and you're stuck. But a lot of the time, if we look at the siblings of our direct ancestors, we really can solve those problems. So in this case, I decided I'm just going to start at the top of the line. The oldest is Adelina Matilda, and I see that she leaves for North America in 1893. So that helps me find her passenger list. And here she is. She's headed to Geneva, Illinois, which is on the west side of Chicago. So I do a little searching for her, and I find a record. I'm not sure if this is my Adelina, but she's in Denver. I know that Swea and Amandus end up in Denver. That's where they filed that declaration of intention. So I'm going to hold on to this. This is a maybe helpful record to me. I found this again in Ancestry. Next down the line is Brother Aaron. And again, using that household examination, I know when he leaves. I find his passenger list. I know this is him. You can see it lists the Paris as Meadows. And he is headed to Rollins, Wyoming. Not Montana, but close-ish. And if you remember, my uncle said that he came with his brothers. And so one of our main topics in any Focus on class is search strategy. And so here I'm demonstrating how to use wildcards and sliders and keywords within a database, this Ancestry database. And in doing so, I narrow my results really quick, and here they are. Here are the brothers. All my Johnsons, including Amandus, heading to Rollins, Wyoming. And as Suzanne said before, you know, a lot of us are doing our research real late. I think I probably found this at, 2 a.m. one night. So at this point, I'm like, I gotta go to bed. This is a great place to start, but I have time for one more Google search. And so I do a quick Google search on Swedish immigrants, and I think Rollins, Wyoming, because I'm like, Rollins, Wyoming, that is so specific. And I find this book. And it's not available online because it's new, but through the Google Book Preview, I'm able to find evidence that Aaron homesteaded in Wyoming, that he ran 7,000 heads of sheep. And I also learned through these excerpts, I can't see the whole book, but through the excerpts, that the book contains snippets of letters between Aaron and the love of his life, who later became his wife, who didn't want to come to America. So I have no idea where these letters came from, who's holding them, but I have to, by now, have to order this book and see what I can find out. So back to my research though, next day. By 1900, I've got 6 Johnsons in the US, I've got 5 brothers in Rollins, and yet I can find 1 in the 1900 census. So this is Aaron, the older brother. He's living in Carbon County, which is where Rollins is located. He's living in Carbon County, Wyoming, and he's working as a sheep breeder. So what else might I use to track down Amandus at this time? I am going to go back to newspapers. And I've got a location for his brother, Aaron. His brother's in Carbon County, which again is where Rollins is. So I want to know what newspapers are in Wyoming at this time, and were there any serving Rollins specifically? And so using our catalog, I find that we have a guide to Wyoming newspapers in the collection. And this is literally a list of newspapers in Wyoming, the areas they served, and the years they were extant. So it's a fabulous resource. So I find a couple titles that are serving Rollins, including the Rollins Republican. And I start searching online for who holds the Rollins Republican. Unfortunately, none of our databases do, but I find that the Wyoming State Archives has digitized and posted a lot of their local newspapers to their website. And doing some searching, I find that indeed Amandus is here in Rollins in December 1901. He sent unclaimed mail at the post office. So I've got Amandus and Aaron still in Rollins. Aaron is at least involved with sheep breeding, and sheep breeding takes land. So I want to think about property records. And I go to the county courthouse, and this was posted on their webpage, believe it or not, this beautiful scan. This is posted on their website that I was able to print and then scan with my little arrow there. And so I don't find any land transfers, but what I do find is a transfer of a brand. So it's the transfer 32 brand from A.W. Johnson to a Strandberg. And again, thinking about time and place, what's a brand? And for someone, I lived in Texas for many years, so I know brands are actually a pretty big deal, and that brands have to be registered. And I have to tell you, I was getting pretty excited because I start thinking, I don't have any tattoos, but what if I got my family brand? So I'm going to look for a brand book because these do actually have to be registered. And one of our common focus on topics, we do this every other year. We won't be doing it 2020, but probably in 2021, is digital books. And so on Happy Trust, I find the official brand book of the state of Wyoming. And again, I'm getting pretty excited, only to find out that the 32 brand that went to Strandberg from Johnson is literally the most boring on this entire page. So still no tattoos for me. So again, I've got the brand, but no land. Oh, there's my little sheep. Okay, so I had the brand transfer, but I didn't find any land transfers at the county level. But you may be thinking, isn't Wyoming a land grant state? Yes, it was. And so, and that book that at this point I'm still waiting to show up on my doorstep, this book suggested that Aaron homesteaded in Wyoming. And so the Homestead Act of 1862, was really to help help the people, immigrants living in slums. It helped to provide them with a way out. And so you had to be 21 to qualify for a homestead. You had to live there for 5 years, but you did not have to be an American citizen, which is something that a lot of our patrons don't realize. So you did not have to be a citizen of the United States to qualify and participate in the Homestead Act. So I look on the BLM GLO site, which is the Bureau of Land Management Grant Land Office webpage, and it's not complete yet. I will warn you guys about that, because so do not fear if you don't find anything on that site. It's nice if you do, though, because it's a lot easier to find than doing what I had to do next, which I brought up the Bureau of Land Management tract books. These are unindexed. Unindexed means it's not keyword searchable. These are on Family Search. And we actually teach classes on indexing and how to index records. It's a way to give back to the genealogy community, because if they're not indexed, you have to browse, which literally means going page by page, which may not be a huge deal, except this particular collection is almost 1 million pages. And then I think, well, but how much is Wyoming? A lot, 155 volumes just of Wyoming. So thank goodness, the next day at this point I've gotten the book, I realized that the letters related to Aaron Johnson, again, this is Amandus' older brother, are located in the Swedish Immigrant Institute at Växjö in Sweden. So I write to them in Växjö and explain what I'm doing and say, I'm happy to pay. And I did have to pay quite a bit for this, but I'm happy to pay for anything that you have related to Aaron Johnson. And I wake up one day and there's 75 documents in my inbox. And this was the first one. And it's the Homestead Record for Aaron Johnson, filed at the Evanston, Wyoming Land Office in December 3rd, 1901. And one of the classes that we teach for Focus On is maps and how to use maps. And so what this Homestead Record gives me is it gives me the coordinates for the land that he was granted. So I go ahead and plot that. And I find that his land is actually in Sweetwater County, not Carbon County, but Rollins is just over the county line there. But now I've got another location for him. And then I open the second document, and oh my goodness, I have a homestead record for Amandus, my great-grandfather. You can see that Aaron's application number was 2197. Amandus is 2198. So big brother went first, little brother went second. But I also have Amandus's coordinates, and we go ahead and we plot that, and we find they're right next to each other. So they homesteaded right next to each other in Sweetwater, filing that paperwork in December 1901, which again explains why Amandus had unclaimed mail listed in the paper in December 1901 in Rollins. He's off in Sweetwater checking out his new property. So other things that came from that institute was this letter, one of the few things in English. This is a letter from the surveyor that was written on November 29th, 1901. So he writes this, and it explains that the property looks really good, the land looks good. He hopes that they're able to get it, and that he thinks it will be very valuable for the family. That's November 29th. And then again, they file their paperwork 4 days later on December 3rd. I also got a photo of 4 of the brothers. I have no idea if any of these are my Amandus. If it is, I think it's the one in the middle, because there's some resemblance to my great aunt there. But this was just fabulous. And, the reason that I included this in this presentation is that my division, the division I oversee, is genealogy and local history. And in our division, we do have the papers of some early Carlsbad early Carlsbad families and early Carlsbad organizations. And so this is to illustrate that even though you yourself may not have the letters and records of your ancestors, someone might. And that someone may be a library, it may be a museum, a historical society, a university, and to really encourage you to think broad and tell you that it really is worth a shot to write to some of these institutions when you're doing your genealogy research. This was a tip that I had been given numerous times and thought, there's no way anything related to my family is saved anywhere like that. And then lo and behold, I got just a treasure trove of materials from this museum in Sweden. But we'll get back to the story here. So I've got Amandus in 1901. He's filing his homestead papers. And we know he re-enters the United States with Svea, my great-grandmother, in 1912. And they're headed to Chicago. So what can I do to close this gap of time? Where is Amandus between December 1901 and November 1912? An obvious source would be the 1910 census, and I will tell you there are plenty of Amandus Johnsons in the 1910 census, but none in Wyoming, none in Colorado, Denver, none in the Chicago area. So I head back to newspapers. And when we're dealing with our immigrant ancestors, don't forget about immigrant newspapers. These are absolutely vital sources of information for our immigrant populations. And of course, the same type of information that's included in these, English newspapers from this time is included in these, just in Swedish. So here we have a notice that Erar Gottfried Johnson, which is one of the brothers, from Nome, Alaska, and Amandus Johnson of Rollins, Wyoming, his brother, are staying in the house of Oscar Reinhold at 3028 West 34th Street. Now, I'm not sure if you remember, but Oscar Reinhold was the name of the husband of Adelina. So Adelina is the oldest sister, the oldest Johnson sister. She's in Denver with her husband Oscar, and her two brothers, Gottfried and Amandus, are staying there in Denver, and we've got an address here. And this is also just a good example, again, of why you really have to throw spelling out and think broad and use wildcards. Of course, they spelled Rollins the way it sure sounds like it would be spelled, but, if we had put in the real spelling, Rawlins, we never would have found this. If we would have put in Wyoming, we never would have found this. So this really was a broad search to pull this one up. If we look at city directories, which are another great way to fill gaps between census, we find that Amandus was at 3028 West 34th Avenue long enough to get recorded in the city directory for 1912. This one came from Fold 3. Again, great source for city directories and available from home with your Carlsbad City Library card. So let's go back to the letters that came from the Institute. And I will tell you that these are predominantly written in Swedish, but what's interesting about these letters is they flip between Swedish with a little bit of English sprinkled in. So sometimes you can get some clues. And I've actually paid to have some of these translated by a university in Chicago, actually, but it's expensive. So I've kind of had to pick and choose which ones I've chosen to have translated. And this is one of them, and it's January 27th, 1912, and I'm just assuming this is going to include some information about how he's, Amandus is ready to settle down, looking for a wife. Maybe he already has met Svea somehow, or he's exchanging letters, and it is absolutely nothing like that. This letter is complaining about the bank in Rollins, how he's trying to get the money out of Rollins, and all the trouble he's having with his brothers. So this was kind of a dead end. So I'm no more closer to knowing why he goes back to Sweden later that year, because of course, assuming that Amandus is the father of my great auntie Goldie, which we like to assume in my family, assuming he's the father, and for Svea to show up pregnant at Ellis Island, Dee's born in February, so Amandus has got to get back to Sweden in about June. So what else can we look at? Well, where is Svea at this point? And to find Svea, we find she is living in Stockholm. And by 1912, she's left her rural village and moved to Stockholm. And because Stockholm is so large, again, time and place, it's too much for parish priests to keep track of the comings and goings. So Stockholm City Council by this point has created a district system, which is called a rotar. Rotar is district. And so the residents are kept track of by Rotman. And so this is the Rotman's archive, and this is available online. It's in Swedish. You can use the English translation button on Google Chrome to get some translation. So here we have Svea. So this is different than the household examination record that we saw earlier, but it contains a lot of the same information, including that she moved out on October 2nd, 1912. She moved to another country, and that country was America. So that is tracking for when she shows up with Amandus at Ellis Island. So how does she hook up with him? Because he is from Kalmar, which you may remember, he lists his birthplace as Kalmar on that declaration of intention, and Kalmar is several hours from Stockholm. I learned from this record that Svea is a housemaid. She's a servant. He's a sheep farmer, so not a natural connection there. So I kind of start casting a really wide, you might call it, desperate net, and think, well, maybe all this stress that he's having with the bank and Rollins, maybe he just needs a vacation, and he heads back to Sweden, and specifically Stockholm, to attend the Olympics. and that, Sweden was only second to the United States in the number of medals earned, and so maybe there was a celebration. This is a listing out of the Swedish newspaper Svenska Amerikanska Western, and you can see that they were booking trips to go see the Olympics out of Denver. So he could have possibly done this. I share this hypothesis with one of my colleagues, and he responded, "Are you serious? There is absolutely no way that is what happened. You are really reaching here." So I have to go back to my siblings, and I go back to that list of 11 siblings. I get all the way to the bottom, the youngest, Emma Augustus Johansson, and lo and behold, Emma Augusta Johansson in 1912 is working as a housemaid in Stockholm, just a few blocks from Sweden. And so I have to think, well, this is probably the connection. This is probably the connection here. And so I look back at some of my letters, and I find this letter. This is written from Nome, Alaska. So this is another one of the brothers, written in 1913. So after Amandus and Svea have arrived at Ellis Island. And again, this is that sort of Swedish-English mix. And so you may see some words here that you can make out, because I was able to make them out. And it includes that Amandus was married before, and then it goes into Sweden. And then it says Augusta are in Chicago. And I think, ding, ding, ding. Here's my connection here. So let me find Augusta's immigration record if she's going to Chicago. And again, that's Emma Augusta. And here I find her. She's Emma A. Johansson. And she is headed to Chicago. And again, I've mentioned how these are 2-page spreads. So if I look at that second page, I find that she is heading to 1135 Townsend to be with cousin Maria Carlson. And so this is in August 1912. So then I take a look again at that Amandus and Svea record and find that they too are headed to 1135 Townsend, cousin Maria Carlson. And 1135 Townsend is a mile from 2162 Lincoln. So it's a mile from where they end up with the boarding house. So I have to assume that Amandus goes back to Stockholm to visit Emma Augusta, or perhaps to help her get ready to come to the US, meets her friend Swea, or somehow meets Swea while he's there, and then they end up following Emma to Chicago. So we know they get to Chicago in 1912, and then we know that Amanda suffers the accident, that suffers the beating in 1915. So on the right here, these are more detailed descriptions of the altercation published in Swedish newspapers in 1915. So it talks about how an unknown friend wanted to rent a room, that a man from behind gave him a hard blow in the head, that he passed out, and that when he came to, the man was gone, that there was an undesirable tenant, there was a ruse to rent the room. And to do these, I just put them through Google Translate. So there are some funny little things when you do that, as I'm sure you've learned. So for example, if I put this into Google Translate, Amanda suffered a stunning blow to the head with a lollipop. I think that's quite right, but so, it's helpful, but not 100%. But again, they show up in 1912, end of 1912. Their first child is born in February 1918. And then here on the left is a posting from 1914, where they're posting rooms available for rent, and that you can contact Mrs. Johnson, so that's Swea, my great-grandmother, and that she's a good communicator. So that's July 1914, and then unfortunately by October, the situation has gone downhill pretty fast. So they have said for sale or to trade a 25-room boarding house, including furnishings, very cheap. So already they're trying to get out of the business, it looks like to me, by October 1914. And then, of course, it's about a year later that Amanda is attacked, unfortunately. So does he really leave in the cover of night? I'm not sure. We look in the directories, and I've got Amanda's at 2162 Lincoln in 14 and 15. And then I don't have him in Denver again until 1918. And that, of course, I knew that much. That didn't really help me, because in 1918, that's my grandmother being born, and she is born in Denver. So do they continue this boarding house business? Do they continue, is it a boarding house? Is it a brothel? What are they running? Is this something they give up? We find in the 1920 census, we find the family listed in Denver, and it includes a boarder. So a boarder is living with them, a Marshall Bruggenser. And then if we check 1930, we find the family again with no boarders listed this time, no extra inhabitants. And by 1930, he's listed here, and he was listed here in the directory as well, as working for the Union Pacific Railroad in 1930 as a car repairer. By 1930, my grandma, who's there, actually with the pin line coming out of her head, that's my grandmother. She had met my grandfather high school in Denver. It's really kind of a fun discovery. I found one of their friends' yearbooks on Ancestry Library Edition, and my grandmother actually wrote all through this thing. It's just wild, a really cool find. But my grandparents were high school sweethearts in Denver, and this was my grandpa Jack, and he had told my father once that, in the Great Depression, everyone, is looking for work, and Amanda's actually gave up his job at the railroad. And so there was always this sort of joke of, well, why would someone give up a job in the Depression? Was it a boarding house that was keeping them afloat, or was it a brothel that was keeping them afloat in Denver? And so we do a search. I did a search in the city directories using the card catalog, and then getting to the city directory database in Ancestry. And again, this is kind of to show another way to think about doing searches. In this case, we did a keyword search for the address where they were living in 1920 and 1930, 1353 Delaware. We're going to match it exact. And we find, actually, there were 75 people that were boarders that listed this address, my great-grandparents' address, between 1920 and 1938. So it really was a boarding house. It was above board. He was not a chicken, as Swea said. He got back into the boarding house business again. And this tracks that it ends in 1938 because that's when Amanda's passes away. He passes away actually on Thanksgiving Day in 1938. Any of you have done genealogy work in Colorado know how expensive it is to get vital records from them. So in this case, I'm using an obituary. And again, Immigrant Newspapers, his obituary was only published in the Immigrant Newspaper. It was not in the Swedish newspaper. It was not published in English newspapers. And there's his graveside. We're going to be doing a focus on find a grave and obituaries and death records and alternatives to death records in October this year. So there's Amanda's gravestone and Swea right next door. And the fact that this is cut off, I know this photo was taken by my grandma, but they are buried at the Crown Hill Memorial Park in Denver. And I found this in my mom's things. But so Amanda's passes away in 1938. Swea actually lives until 1980. She ends up passing away at her daughter Ruth's house. Ruth there is in the photo behind the chair. And she passes away just a few months after I was born. So that's me, the baby there. And then on the right is my sister and I with our Swedish garb that my grandma Ruth brought back after she went to Sweden to visit the home places, the hometowns of her parents in Sweden. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to share that with you.
Sarah, I could not think of a better case study to show because, I mean, like you just covered everything. I mean, you covered cluster genealogy, you covered, multi-sourcing, sleuthing, closing gaps that don't make sense, questioning. You just covered everything. I can't wait to go home and share this with my husband tonight.
Yeah, it's why we've really gotten into our January classes because it's an opportunity for us to bring all this work together. And again, we really want to show our patrons, we really want to show what happens when you bring it all together. It becomes such a colorful story. And the records really are out there. They take some digging, but a lot of times, even when you think there's no way there's going to be anything about my family out there, my family were poor immigrants, it's amazing the kind of resources that we're able to uncover time and time again through persistence and hard work.
And another thing that I really noticed in your samples is this was the perfect picture, a perfect illustration of how one record leads to another. How one little clue in one record, if you think about it, if you take it to that next step, can lead you to so many more records. And then once again, when you find those records, a clue in that record will lead you to another record. It's just a matter if you're really hot on the trail and you want to stick to it and see it through to the end like you did in this beautiful example.
Well, thank you for that. And I do want to point out, because that is something that the staff, we try to reiterate a lot, especially when you're getting started, that you need to realize that, especially when you're using Family Search or Ancestry, that you're looking often at indexed records, and not every field of information that's included in a record gets indexed. And so, for example, when you're looking at a census record, an indexed copy of a census record in Ancestry, it's going to give you kind of some high points, but once you open up that record and actually look at it, there is so much more information. But like that passenger list, the only way I was going to find out they went to 1135 Townsend in Chicago is by opening that record and reading every single cell all the headings, all the information that's included. You have to, read everything that you can and flip, like I said, flip those pages, because a lot of time there's a clue really nearby.
The one thing that you pointed out that in all my years of doing genealogy, I'd never thought of was a brand. I never would have thought of that one. So you've actually taught me something new today. So I was really jazzed about that.
It's funny that where we find, these interesting bits. One of my colleagues did a similar presentation one of the years that we did this, and the big clue for him actually came in a recipe book. It was a recipe book that passed down through the family, and someone, I'm going to kind of probably screw this up, but someone had written it was Auntie Something's recipe, and that was the clue that tied decades of research together. He was never able to answer this, figure out the relationship to prove the parentage, and it was this recipe book on one page solved all of that, and he got it as kind of a fluke. One of his family members was like, I'm cleaning all this out. If anybody wants it, I thought it might be you. And boy, did he want it.
That was wonderful. Do we have any last questions before we let her go? Anybody, afterthought, a question from the first part or the second part? No?
Do this for hire?
Did you hear that? They want to know if they can hire you.
No, we do not accept money for our services, but again, we are a staff of very passionate genealogists. Again, half of the staff have come to this after retiring from their careers. We truly love genealogy, and this is the kind of stuff that excites us. We love helping our patrons find this kind of stuff. We love sharing all these tricks and tips that we've learned over the years to help you guys fill in these holes. And again, tell the stories of our ancestors, because one of the things we talk about a lot here at the library is as more and more stuff is online, the facts easier and easier to find, they almost become less important. And so it's really this sort of color and context you can pack around the fact that makes these stories so memorable, and we'll make sure they get passed along through the generation and get your relatives and family members excited about the work that you're doing.
That's wonderful. Let's give her a big. Oh, hold on. We do have one last question. Go ahead.
I go to the. Oh, there.
You'll have to repeat it.
Okay. She's planning on going to the Salt Lake City Research Library, and she was really interested in your class, the one that preps you to go to Salt Lake City, and she was wondering if the class that you're teaching is not available, recorded wise or virtual, where they can attend, either after the fact or live during it. Can you recommend any other source that would teach her what she would need to do to prep for a trip like that?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I would search for webinars on that. There are a lot of webinars. Family Search has so many resources available through their site. We teach at least 2, sometimes 4 months worth of Family Search classes in our Focus On series, because it's just become such an important resource. I do want to say, though, that in addition, I should have mentioned this earlier, in addition to posting the videos of that intermediate class on the Society webpage, again, it's behind the member wall, and membership, I believe, is $35 per a year. They also post all the handouts from their partnership classes. So the handouts from the Salt Lake City classes that we offer. I didn't get real into this, but again, because it's a partnership, it sort of lives in the Society's realm. We provide the space and the technology and publicity, and then they book the speakers and create the content. So that piece sort of lives in their wheelhouse, their realm. Those handouts, though, are posted behind the member wall on the Society's webpage. So it may be something for $35 that you may be interested in joining that Society to get access to all the handouts from all the programs that are offered throughout the year.
Great advice. Any last questions? Okay, let's give her a big hand, shall we? We cannot thank you enough, Sarah, for your time and your expertise. And I hope every one of our students, if they go down to Southern California, will stop by and pick up that library card in person and visit your wonderful library. I cannot tell you again how much I miss being in Southern California and being able to go to your library. I used to wait for weekends, because I worked Monday through Friday, and I used to wait for weekends so I could go down there and spend time. And on my days off, I would always go down there. And I tell you, I sure missed that library.
Well, we love to hear that. We have a lot of dedicated patrons. So yes, we would welcome any and all of you with open arms. This was an absolute pleasure to do. I apologize for the few technology issues I had. Sorry I didn't come with my plug first off, but I appreciate your patience, your great questions, and this was a blast. So Happy New Year, everybody, and happy spring.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.